Hey, good morning, everyone. Joining in this particularly interesting webinar, Home Budgeting Done Right. My name is Ibrahim. I'm going to be moderating this very interesting panel that I have for you this morning. But for now, there are some housekeeping tips that I want to share with you. So let's roll the VT.
Welcome to Astro AWANI LINC's brand new webinar platform designed to enhance your experience. A couple of hygiene points. We recommend that you shut down other video and audio tabs to clear up your bandwidth for a better experience. Should you experience any technical difficulties such as lag or interruptions, please click on the red reconnect button. If there is a major glitch that is experienced by a majority of the people in the room, we may reset the entire system. Just sit back and relax. You will be taken to a new room automatically. If you have a question you would like to ask the speakers, kindly mark your remark as a question. And finally, we would appreciate it if you could tell us what you think of your webinar experience. Do give us a 5-star rating if you like the session and write to us via the contact us form on our website.
Yep, as mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, just use the chat button on the side of the screen. Drop in your questions. We're going to cluster some of the questions together so that we can answer them at one shot. Also, advanced apologies if we can't get through to all the questions. For now, allow me to have the pleasure to introduce our speakers for this morning. We have Peter, the founder of Mr. Money TV, as well as Michelle Chin, founder of Her Do It. Here's something for you. And there you have it. That's the big introduction that we have. So let's pull up Peter as well as Michelle, or Mr. Money, as he would like to be known, on the screen. Well, how are you guys this morning? You guys okay?
All good. Yeah. Hi,
Doing
Ibrahim.
very well. Hello.
So one of the reasons why we wanted to have this topic is because there's a lot of people that are trying to be a little bit more aware of their financial issues, try to upskill themselves in financial literacy. Not many of them are advanced so-called financial users. They're very much in the beginning stage, and they are just starting their journey. And the topic of the day is, of course, home budgeting done right. And we want to focus on how we can prepare ourselves to do some form of financial planning that help us make a lot of money, right? We just put there $1 million, but generally speaking, financial freedom, as much as we want to, define it personally, I mean, my financial freedom is different from everybody else's, and everybody else's is different from mine. So that's the motive that we want to do right now. Just upskill ourselves, just learn the basics, try to understand what is the most important for us to know now. And then later on, as we venture across this financial planning journey of ours, we will upskill ourselves in other areas. But for now, let's try to take it a step back and try to understand what must we think about when it comes to financial planning. So let's start with Mr. Money first. What do you think when we ask about ourselves when we think about financial planning?
I think one of the most important basic that at the moment you start thinking about financial planning is like what Ibrahim say. You need to first define what financial freedom means for you, or what financial stability means for you to even start off with. For some people, it is having 50,000 setiap bulan, right? For some people, it is just I can go out for weekend dinner with my family and I'm happy enough, right? Some people, it's I want to build a crazy business that gives me multi-million legacy. So it really depends on individual, because I think so far in my experience dealing with people, many people actually don't set this out right first. They just straight away sit down and they say, okay, financial planning. I want to save a lot of money. I want to have a lot of money. And they straight away think like, I need to have a 50% return every year from my investment, 30% return every year from my investment. Then you start looking at other things like even ASB or whatnot, and then you kata, hey, 5% je, 4% je, tak boleh lah. But the truth is, you don't even sit down and think, what do you actually really want? Then it's very hard for you to fix the number in and then say that this is right or not right. It's kind of like building a house, kan? When you want to build a house, you know that you want to build the atap. What are the tools that are needed there? You can't say that today I want to hammer a nail, kan? And then you go and buy a screwdriver back home. So you need to fit the right things that you want to build with the right tools. And investment is just
so the main idea here is that the objective has to be clear, but the problem is also sometimes people don't know what their objective should be. Michelle, what do you think of this objective setting when it comes to financial planning?
I love this question because a lot of times when we talk about money, we always think about a figure. So getting to, let's say, 1 million ringgit. But what people don't look beyond that number is what do they want to achieve with this financial number that they have. So I think that's really important, setting a goal, not just based on the number that you think you want, but understanding the logic behind setting that number, exactly like what Peter said. What would this amount of money do for you? Does it mean financial independence or financial freedom? Does it mean you get to think about whether I still want to do my job? Or you can say, I want to not work anymore and be able to spend more time with my family and my children. So I think precedence, like, it's super important to set that goal first. And when you read more literature or more research about spending money and making money, a lot of the research point towards how money should be defined, or you should define your financial goals based on happiness. So less about, oh, this money can buy me this particular house in this particular area, but what does this house bring to you in terms of the definition of money? Does it make you happier because you get to spend more time with your children in a larger backyard? You get to cook more at home with a larger kitchen and spend more time with your family? Or is it just, I want to have space of my own and I want to be alone? And that's completely fine. I think as long as you are able to set those goals for yourself.
Okay, let's jump right into it. We're going to hold off the questions right until the end, but you can continuously type in your questions, ask Mr. Money, ask her duet, Michelle, on any of the things that is related to this topic. You can even ask them what they have for breakfast as well. But for now, let's focus on the subject matter at hand. Do we have any plans or tips and tricks in order for us to answer the question of home budgeting done right? Maybe Mr. Money can take this?
All right, I think we actually prepared a 7-step method to actually get there, right? So I believe you guys can actually pull up the screen. So there's this very common 7-step method of managing finance that's all around the internet. But what we do is that we actually adapt it a little bit more to Malaysian. Yeah, where the first step is actually by saving 1,000 ringgit as a starter emergency fund for anybody out there. And if let's say you already start off with debts, because we know that quite many Malaysians at the moment they come up, they already have debts, and maybe you've been working for a while, but you accumulated credit card debts, kan? So you need to pay off those debts. And then once you settle that, that's where you figure out how to fund a full emergency fund with 3 to 6 months. Then subsequently putting aside another 10% of your income for retirement savings. We'll definitely go into details later. And after that, creating new income stream, because I think it's quite obvious in Malaysia, one of the biggest problems is we don't earn enough money. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all about earning ability, right? And number 6 is actually investing for big ticket item, or maybe paying off your house early. That's something you want to look at. And finally, it's the more inspirational part. Build your wealth, your financial freedom, and give to the people that you love, right? Or yeah, whatever the aspirations are. Yep.
So let's bring in Michelle. Why do we first need to understand the concept of emergency funds? And I know Mr. Money started off with 1,000 ringgit, but the idea here is not just the absolute amount, but having an emergency fund outright. And now the pandemic, it's like underlining the importance of us to have some sort of emergency fund. But why the need to have an emergency fund? And why is it important for us to have the absolute single amount number for us to strive for?
This is such an important question, especially as you said, because of the pandemic, a lot of us have been put in situations whereby it is an emergency situation. I think pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, you would think, what would constitute an emergency situation? Do I even need to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses when will we ever reach a stage where we need that? But if you look at the past year, it's 1 week away to our first MCO anniversary. And that means if you lost your job at the start of the MCO, that means, and you haven't got a job now, you've been living jobless for 12 months and may have been without an income. And that's why the emergency fund is so important. But beyond the pandemic, if we look before and after, hopefully when the world comes back to a little bit more new normal, there are many emergency situations that we can't anticipate. And that's why it's called emergency, especially emergency situations whereby we can no longer work and no longer make income for ourselves. So for instance, if today your job is, for example, a delivery person, and you got into an accident, for example, and your main income source is delivery, and you can no longer ride your bike and go out and send your Grab food or your Food Panda and all these other food delivery services, this is when you have to dip into your emergency funds, because there's no way for you to be able to make an income. So you will have to have a bunch of savings that you have saved up before in order for you to live off it. And there are many situations, and that's why it's called an emergency fund, because it comes when we least expect it. And if you think about it, if you don't have an emergency fund, you don't have these savings with you, when something unexpected happens, what can you do? I mean, one thing you can say is you go and find a job and make money, but more often than not, it's harder than that. In some situations, if you have family members or friends that can lend you money, then perhaps you can do that. But we know that borrowing money from your friends and family is not that simple and not that straightforward. If not, then you may have to get into debt. And that really makes a big dent in your money and your savings and your personal finance situation as a whole. And that's why emergency funds are so important. And the reason why we want to start with something simple, for example, like the 1,000 ringgit that Peter has mentioned, is it's a goal. Whenever we have anything that has to do with personal finance or money management, we always have to start with a goal, like I mentioned earlier during the introduction. And this goal feel accomplished. It can be small amounts if you don't make a lot of money right now, 100 ringgit, 200 ringgit. I know a lot of people who they have a little coloring book or coloring worksheet where they draw a real tabung, for example, and then they color for every 100 ringgit that they saved for their emergency funds, they color 100 ringgit worth in that coloring sheet. And that gives you a lot more motivation to move forward with your emergency funds because it's such a big amount.
The temptation for us to dip into the savings, just tak apalah, just ambil 100 ringgit, nanti I top up besok lah. That temptation is unbelievably hard to combat. What will be some of the ideas that you have in terms of trying to make sure that the emergency fund that we speak of is not going to be touched no matter what? And the follow-up question is, so when do we use the emergency fund? Is it not the 100 ringgit or 200 ringgit that we take? Isn't that an emergency fund?
Yeah, I believe it's what Ibrahim says is very, very true. I think, in fact, yesterday I was just having a conversation with a friend, right? He was asking me that, hey, every month I actually budget my money ka Excel tau. He tell me, you put in everything. But when I look in my bank account and the number in Excel, different one, he say. So he asked me how, Peter. So I told him this one thing lah. I say, at the end of the day, the truth is it's really all about discipline. But there are some things that you can do to help yourself. Because if one day you want to dip in your money, you want to ambil duit keluar daripada tabung kan, that one, I mean, who's there to stop you, right? Like, no one's going to tie your hands up and say, tak boleh, macam tu kan. So one of the things that you have to figure out doing is to split your money. They say, kalau tak nampak, then it's safer. So paling penting tak nampak. So I myself, I actually save my cash in places that I cannot access. So for example, instead of putting my money into FD kan, I put it into money market fund. Because money market fund, to withdraw, it takes me 3 days. So let's say tomorrow I want to buy the latest iPhone Pro or the iPad Air and I know in order to buy that, I need to go and withdraw money kan. So it takes me 3 days. And that 3 days, I would really think through, do I even need it or not? Then if by God's grace I change my mind, then good lah, I save that money lah. If don't, then so sorry lah, I end up using that lah. Also, no one can stop you. But number 2 is this. Try your very best not to use credit card if you got this problem. Because I think today the biggest problem is this. We always think of it this way, like, hey, never mind, swipe the card first. Swipe dulu. Then after you swipe, and you think like maybe next month I can pay back. But that's when you get into trouble. Because credit card allow you to drag. And very often this is where people mati. So to my friend's surprise, actually, when he asked me, I told him, many people, your Maxis bill, your phone bill, Unify bill, all these bill, right? You put under credit card because can earn points, can. Actually, I don't do that one. I put all under debit card.
Okay, I got a question by Kristen, and I think we need to address this now. What is money market fund? Let's be clear on that. Either Michelle or Peter, you want to take this?
Michelle?
Sorry. So I'm going to use some big words here, money market funds, but I'll explain it in a little bit. So money market funds are liquid, short-term cash equivalent type of investment. But essentially, it is a tool that banks themselves use actually to safeguard their cash. And why is it different from FD, for example, as like why Peter put his money in money market funds instead of FD? I also put my money in money market funds instead of FD. Is because there's a potential to earn more money and there is less restrictions. So for example, if you put your money in FD, you are locked down for a certain period of time. And in an emergency situation where you have to take out your money before that period of time, then you lose all the interest that you may have earned. But a money market fund has the flexibility of allowing you to take your money in and out for any time, and there is no penalty when you take that money out. It also depends on the provider of your money market fund, for example. So do check that out. Usually the interests are better than FD. So that's why we choose to use something like a money market fund instead of a fixed deposit, for example.
Fantastic. Michelle, since we have you, let's go on to the second point of that 7-step plan, which is to eradicate debt that is expensive. Let's go through that.
Oh, so there are different types of debt, right? Majorly, there are two categories. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And how do we define good debt? Is potentially debt that can build assets for you. For example, your housing loan or your ASB financing. But in terms of bad debt, and that's what we want to talk about today, includes things like credit card debt or even your car loans. And the reason why you want to eradicate your debt as fast as possible is because it can make a major dent to your money management or your personal finance as a whole. And when we talk about paying off expensive debts, there's actually a concept called snowball. So you can actually pay off your debts gradually, starting from, for example, the highest interest debt, because that's going to make the biggest dent to your personal finance, right? Start with the thing that has the highest interest for your loans, and then you can move downwards from there. Or another alternative is that you can go upwards, where you start somewhere simple. So pay off the ones that has like the lowest interest or like is the easiest, the smallest amount for you, and then slowly build towards something big. And this is for people who probably need a bit more motivation when they're trying to pay off their debts. Because imagine paying off a 20,000 ringgit debt. Like that is going to take you a really, really long time to get there. And it feels very scary. And instead of trying to face the debt, you want to run away from it and you may accumulate more debt on the way. So depending on your characteristic and what you feel fits you better, there are two types of debt crushing methods: building up from small or crushing the biggest debt first and coming down from there.
We got a question by Tawan. This is for Mr. Money or Peter. This is the typical question that we normally get when it comes to managing expensive debt like credit card. Tay is asking, a lot of online experts say that it's better to use your credit card for daily expenses like bills and stuff like that, and that basically gets you points or some kind of reward system, and at the same time, debit card doesn't give you a lot or anything even. Peter, what's your approach to this kind of question? Again, this is a very normal question to ask when it comes to 18% kind of credit card interest questions.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think this is one thing that's really a little bit more towards a personal stance, right? It depends on yourself how disciplined you are. So let me share with you, me and my sister, we are very, very different. My sister, she is very good at doing this. She'll earn all the points, she'll pay back our credit card, and then she'll make a lot of money out of it, save up like 5 to 10%, with that. But I am just so bad at it because I myself am not so disciplined. So end up I'll spend. Then after I'll realize that, tak cukup duit lah. Then I'll start pulling out here and there. And what happens is at the end of the day, I end up losing more money. So the point here is this: if you are the kind of person who's very, very disciplined, you're very good at keeping track of your money to the minute details, then it's good for you. It's good for you. But if you're not this kind of person, then you will end up losing more money just by earning more points. And besides, the truth is, the points in your credit card, you also need to spend more money to redeem it. So at the end of the day, you're also encouraging yourself to spend more money, kan? So that's for myself lah. At the end of the day, it works for individual. If you are the kind that's very disciplined, great. If you're not the kind that's disciplined, then my advice, it's not worth earning that lah. You'll get yourself into more trouble.
Okay, that comes to the second question by Serena, which is also common when it comes to credit cards, right? Serena is asking, is it absolutely compulsory to get a credit card to keep track of a credit score, to earn better credit score, CTOS, CCRIS kind of thing? She says that, I don't actually need one, but I'm concerned about giving a good credit score. Michelle, what's your idea on this?
That's a great question. I think this is a common question that most people have also. So if you existingly have any loans, and that includes, for example, your PT-PTN loan, your car loans or housing loan, there's no need to get an additional credit card just for that purpose of keeping a good credit score. But if today in your whole life, you've only been using cash and you've been privileged enough to never have had to take a loan, then you probably need to get a credit card in order to show the bank that you are a good paymaster. And what this means is that why you want to keep a good credit score, right? In the future, one day when you're 30 plus, and then maybe you want to have a family, you want to buy a house, you need to get a loan, you need to go to a bank and get a loan, right? Eventually one day. In order for the bank to feel that they're confident, they want to give you such a big sum of money in order to pay for your housing loan for so long a period of time, they must know your history. If you've only been spending via cash and you've only been spending via your debit card, which is money that you existingly have, which is probably not a big amount, then they wouldn't be able to tell what your history is like. So with a credit card, you can start small first. For example, you just make sure that it's a small amount of money that you bill onto your credit card, maybe a bill, for example, if you're someone who's disciplined enough to do that. Let it pay off, and you pay it off regularly, consistently every single month to show the bank that you have a good credit score. You don't have to use it for every single expense that you have, but if you have nothing that has ever been able to show you that you are a good paymaster, then it's probably a good idea to get a credit card.
Peter, let's go to step number 3 of 7 in managing money. Let's understand a little bit better about why this is important to have a 3 to 6 months kind of runway. And how is it different from the first step just now?
All right. When we talk about the first step and the third step, right, both are emergency fund. But the first step is actually the beginning of it. Why is it so? Is that, like, for example, for many people, they may have started off with some credit card debts. So we know that not everyone is starting at a clean slate. Let me give an example here. About a few years back, I got into quite massive credit card debts, right? We are talking about, I have 2 cards. One card, 5,000 debt. The other card, 20,000 in debt. Right, I was quite lucky. I was still earning quite good money, so I was able to pay back. But that moment, right, there was this one thing that I tried, which is I didn't keep any spare cash. Whatever money I did, I just pump it into my credit card to clear it all. But very often I come into this problem because when you do that, you come to a position where you have no spare cash, and then you really jimat, everything. You put yourself in a very stressful position. And how, as a human being, how long can you last doing that? So maybe eventually at the end of the month, you decide, like, you know what, this month I decide I'm gonna give myself some break. Then you spend a little bit. And where do you spend on since you don't have cash? You spend on a credit card again. So you accumulate again. And because we are human beings, right? Then when you look at a credit card statement, you're like, ayo, I macam dah kalah lah bulan ni. So you feel demotivated, And when you feel demotivated, what happened? You more stressed, right? You're more stressed, then you end up spending more again. Yeah. So this kind of positions start happening again. So after that, what I did, I really followed this baby step exactly. And I actually started putting 1,000 to 2,000 ringgit as cash aside. And what happened was that when there's any stress kind of thing that I really have to spend, or maybe my car tire puncture, or like suddenly my mother say, "Hey, the house there got problem leaking. Can you pay or not?" Then I can take out the money and pay from there. And I didn't swipe my credit card, and that makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, hey, I'm in control of my finance, And that gave me even more motivation to actually get out of the debt even faster. So after that, it really motivated me to set aside my money better. So it helps you to fight this very strong psychological battle, number one. But more importantly, also, it stops you from further accumulating credit card debt. So after that, when you have these 3 to 6 months there already, right? After you have this 1,000, then you clear off your credit card debt. Why do you need 3 to 6 months? It's because the truth is, right, there's only one guarantee in life, is that things will always change. Yeah, whether is it suddenly your wife pregnant ke, or whether is it your car tire puncture ke, your house pipe pocho ke, sure got something will come up lah. Yeah, and naturally, the next thing that you think about is that you want to start investing once you get out of that one. But if you start investing immediately without any emergency fund, you will be very stressed. Because let's say, assuming you letak duit dalam stock market or ETF or whatnot, that month if the stock market went down, or that month the ETF wasn't performing well, and you don't have an emergency fund, what are you going to do again? You're again going to swipe your credit card, or either you need to withdraw from the thing. So that's why it's better to have 3 to 6 months, because that gives you that peace of mind that you don't have to worry. And you don't have to worry whether market do good, do bad, or whatever that's going to happen. You're just going to chill. And that helps you to make much better decision in everything that you're going to do financially as well. Yep.
It's pretty interesting for us to think about managing 3 to 6 months emergency fund, and therefore we fully fund it. But access to emergency fund is also important. Imagine if you don't want to catch out the emergency fund, and then we put it in the money market for 3 months, for instance, for 3 days for us to get back that money, it doesn't become easily accessible. So we have to understand our own limitations lah. But when you think about, that was easy for us to understand the emergency fund, but the 3 to 6 months, quite literally, where do we keep it? Do we keep it in our savings account, or do we keep it under the bed, or some place safe like a money market fund account? What would be some of the tips that you can think about in terms of keeping where this 3 to 6 months emergency fund is going to be located at? Maybe Michelle can take this.
Sure thing. I think it really boils down back to who you are. And for example, like what Peter has said, if you have good discipline in terms of your money, you probably can keep it somewhere where it's more easily accessible, considering that perhaps you may need the money immediately, or you can look at splitting it up. So what I actually do is that I split my emergency funds into 2 buckets. One bucket is the money market fund, whereby it takes me maybe like 3 business days in order for me to withdraw the money out. And exactly like what you said, in situations where there is like a real emergency, for example, someone needs to go for surgery and like insurance doesn't cover that, and then I have to fork out the money immediately, I cannot wait 3 working days for my money to be out. So it needs to be somewhere where I can easily access when I need it, but not easily accessible when I don't need it. So for instance, another thing that you can look at where you can store your emergency fund is a high interest savings account. But this high interest savings account, you can go and Google and find what is the best high interest savings account for yourself. There are a lot in Malaysia. But what you want to do with this high interest savings account is that ideally you don't have a card tied to this account, and you store the information somewhere safe, and then you don't look at it. You only look at it when you have an emergency situation whereby you can go and withdraw your funds immediately into your account. So that is an example of another place that you can store your money, high interest or high savings account, high interest rate savings account, if you don't want to put it into a money market fund or an FD, for example.
Michelle, let's go on to step number 4, which is on retirement savings. And before we start to answer this, how is this different from EPF, Michelle?
So this is a good question, and Peter came up with this 10% about. So it's actually, you should start with your EPF first, and then on top of that, you can build towards more investment to supplement your EPF. If you're just starting out today and you have not done any investments before, it's good that you already have an EPF. If you don't have EPF existingly but you're working, I will also suggest for you to contribute to EPF yourself, and there's a program for you to do that in order for you to take advantage of the pretty regular dividends that's paid out by EPF. But on top of that, because we know that EPF is not enough for our retirement, and that's why we need to set aside a bit of our income and gradually increase that after you become more and more familiar and better at your personal finances in order for you to supplement and cushion up your retirement savings.
Peter, the 10%, is it arbitrary? Do you think that depending on somebody's needs and wants, it should be increased or decreased? And then, of course, when we talk about 10% that is coming out of savings, if you already earn about 1,000 plus or 2,000 plus, 10% is a lot, you know, it's like 200 plus. It's already, you're left with 1,500 or something left. There is a huge temptation for us to not apply step number 4 if you earn too small. What are your thoughts on this?
So here's where, if you notice, right after step number 4 was 5, right, which is to make an extra income. Firstly, to address the question about arbitrary or not, the number 10%, I think that is, to be honest, is a personal thing. Yeah, some people may put 20%. Some people may put 10%. It really depends on yourself, but minimally it's 10%, I would say, because based on the study by KWSP, you should be actually setting aside, or PPA, you should be setting aside 30% for retirement planning, and that would give you a retirement planning income in future that at least cover your living expenses based on your income standard. So like what Michelle said, taken care 20, you add another 10 because your company already take care 20 plus your own contribution, so you just take out another 10. But there's this another problem with Malaysians is that many of us are actually living with quite a low income, and that's why if, let's say, really setting aside 10% is really a problem, right? I wouldn't dare to go and tell someone like, hey, you know, that's the ideal, you should do that, because that's not practical. That's the truth. There are some people makan pun tak cukup duit dah. Yeah, I've gone through that kind of life myself when I was a very, very young kid, right? So I would say this is that if you really have tried your very best, then you really can't set aside the 10%. Your only issue here is really about increasing that income. Yeah, it's really increasing your income already.
Which is step number 5, actually, if you think about it. There's a lot of questions regarding step number 4, which is 10% retirement savings. And because the questions are coming from different angles, I'm going to cluster all the questions for step number 4 later towards the conversation. And I think it's important for us to jump into step number 5 as well. Peter, let's talk about the new income stream right now.
Yeah. So having said that, I think today we're quite blessed to live in a very digital world. It makes it much easier for us to start a business. I would say that last time, if you want to sell nasi lemak, the only way is you buy a table, go outside there, you know, set up a stall, right? And then maybe you kena someone by MPPJ halfway along the way. These are the problem that you have. But today, with a digital world, it makes it much easier for you to set up a business or make an extra income as long as you're willing to spend some time to work hard. What do I mean by that? Is that, think about it, there's Grab. Grab is, you know, just sign up lah, buat je, right? Yeah, some people say, you know, there's a lot of costs associated with it and so on. Okay, if you really cannot put out the 700 to 1,000 ringgit to start Grab, then learn to build a website. I'm pretty sure you have an internet. You can watch Google, learn how to use WordPress, how to buy a domain, and immediately, even if you just started for the first time, start offering this service for free for your friend immediately. You don't need a very good computer to do that. And once you do the first one free for a friend, straight away build a portfolio, put it on your web page, and promote it regularly. And when got business, then you just do lah. Yeah, I've known people who literally on top of their normal day job and they are actually not web designers. They're actually quite not that good in doing website literally. But what they do is that they still offer it as their weekend part-time job. And because of that, they earn extra 4,000 ringgit every month. It took them about half a year to build that up. But, you know, it gets much easier. I know friends who, nowadays sell kueh online. I know this lawyer who during MCO time, there's no jobs. So what she did is that she just cooked curry and she start putting it online. And regularly she just do Facebook Live and tell people, hey, I cook curry. And every week she get an order of about a few hundred ringgit. Minus off a cost, you earn an extra 100, 200 ringgit a month. So if you are willing to, let go of that phase, and jangan kata like, hey, my friend think, what are you doing lah? So memalukan lah. You're just willing to let go of that. I think it's quite simple. Even if you don't want to do that, right? Then there's Fiverr, there is a freelance.com, where you just need to go up there, post up and say, hey, I know how to do some slide video editing. I know how to do a recording. I know how to build a website. I know how to cook or whatnot. You just put up there. Sure, got people find you for some sort of job as long as you're willing to work hard. Yeah. So I think it's a compensation.
We want to ask the angle from a woman's perspective when it comes to building extra income stream. If I'm using my wife as an example, she is working at during the day. She comes back, she does a lot of work at home, a lot of work with the kids, cooks, and there's so many things that are currently happening. I try my best to help her out, and when I can, she will have free time. But the question is, there seems to be a common understanding that women tend to do a lot more already compared to men. How is this going to be applied, this step number 5 for women that are juggling so many things, and then maybe think about increasing an income stream as well? What would be some of the clear challenges that they need to think about when it comes to creating new income stream for women?
That's a great question. I think first thing before answering the question on how we can make more money as a woman, especially one with kids and having to take care of all the household chores, for example, I saw a very interesting comic last week that showed a husband and a wife, and the wife was helping the husband have a party for his friends at home. So she was cooking in the kitchen, and when the husband asked, do you need help? She said, no, it's fine. I'll handle everything. So the husband's just chilling with his friends, for example, and waiting for the food to arrive. And then after the dinner is done and everyone gone home, the wife was exhausted. And I think someone asked the husband, like, why didn't you help your wife? And she said she didn't need help. One of the common things that we face here is that women tend to reject help more often than not. They think that they can do everything. But as a husband or as a supporter or a partner, you should give help regardless of whether the help is asked or whether they reject your help or not. So this is not personal finance, but then that's one of the first things. So hopefully you
but it happens to me all the time, right? I feel guilty, I'm outside, doing like answering emails and all that. I'm like, sayang, I tolong tak? Tak payah. Okay, she said tak payah done. So
just do it.
I got the license already. You see? She said tak payah.
Just do it. Just offer to help anyway. Not ask what to do, but you see like, okay, what does she usually do? But you also have to be aware that maybe you do it like wrongly. Then you may end up doing making her do more work, because if you didn't clean properly, she may have to double clean your things. And it's always just offer help regardless, instead of asking for help. So that's the first thing. But the second question, which is so important as well in terms of personal finance, is how do you know what to offer as a service, right? I think Peter gave some great examples of what you can do. Another thing, if you're struggling to think like, what can I do today? Actually, a great way is that you take your phone out, look at the top 5 people, not work related, not your boss, that you've been speaking to recently. I consider them your good friends. Ask them, hey, what do you think I'm good at? If I were to sell something or a product or a service, what do you think I can do? And more often than not, you realize that people have more idea of what you can do or what your strengths are than yourself, and then you can turn that into a product or a service. Or maybe instead of asking them, what can I sell, ask them, what am I good at? What are my strengths? What do you think I'm very good at that I always help you with? That can be a great way. And for example, for moms who cook, for example, a great way to make additional income is that instead of just cooking for your family, maybe you can cook more and can sell that food that you have made on like Facebook or Instagram. There's so many tools and platforms and marketplaces out there today. And the cost of starting that platform is zero. Your only cost is probably just the cost of ingredients that you have to buy. So that is a pretty easy way to get started. There are also some other things that you can do if you don't have any tech skills, like you don't know how to design websites, for example. There are a lot of great tools that already give you resources to create designs. For me, for example, I use a tool called Canva. It's free to design everything on her Do It. You look super professional, by the way, like by using Canva. So you can offer like illustration or social media, Instagram creating services. If you feel like, hey, every day, like you like to take nice photos on Instagram, you can actually monetize that and turn that into business. So I think actually a lot of things that you can do. You just need to go and find what are these places or what are these things that I'm good at that I can eventually monetize.
Every single step that we go through right now, we're at step number 5. There are plenty of questions at every single step. And it's quite a daunting task for us to address every single question. Some of them are operational questions. Some of them involve brands, which is going to be a bit difficult for folks like us to talk about. So I urge those that have particular questions on each of the single steps to go and speak to Michelle and Peter on Mr. Money, on her Do It. There's a lot of places that you can reach out to them. They are everywhere on the net. They're even on Clubhouse. Peter and I, we talk to each other until we're bored, for God's sake, talking to each other to death while my wife cooks in the kitchen and on Clubhouse. So reach out to these individuals, both of them, and see where your concerns are and where your problems can be addressed. But for now, we have to go overarching and we have to jump into step number 6. Peter, let's go on with you, and then maybe step number 7, Michelle can take.
All right. So step number 6 is actually really about saving for big ticket items or paying off your house, kan? Because although we already taken care of our retirement and stuff like that, creating new income stream, the truth is in life, no one is not so motivated to go and retire, because it's a 30-year story. So I hear a lot of us telling me one thing. I'm not even sure that I'll retire. And in my life also, I've learned that retiring is actually a privilege, because really not everyone gets to retire. That's just sad truth of life. So you also need certain things that you're going to enjoy along the way in life. So maybe for you is buying a house. Yeah, you don't buy a house, you can't pay off a house that early, right? Maybe for you is buying a car. Maybe for you it's saving that 50,000 or 1 million for your children's education fund. It has to be something. And once you create that stable source of income, then here's the time that you start thinking about what matters to you. But I think from here, it's really individual. So the only advice that I would say for anyone is this. This is the time that you need to think very carefully what you spend on that will make you really, really happy. You don't want to end up saving up, investing, and then you go and buy something, and end of the day, you're only happy for 3 days. Then you realize, itu je. Then you start chasing again, right? And that will end up, you get yourself into even more debts again. Then you start from step number 1. So before you go to step 6, my suggestion again is sit down and think carefully what makes you happy if you spend your money on. When you can think about that, when you are certain, then great. Like for me, I used to think buying nice cars will make me happy, but today I sold all my cars, tada kereta, and wasted a lot of my money. Today, what makes me happy is honestly seeing my stock portfolio grow bigger and being able to take care of my wife and my kid. Yeah. So yeah, figure out what makes you happy and then save towards that.
Every time we talk about this, it's not easy for me to say that you should buy a house. I don't buy a house. It's not my thing. And I would be a perpetual renter because I don't want to think about that asset, which is actually a liability if I want to flip it. But that's my thinking lah. And there's a lot more people that can debate and out argue me on this point. But I think the moral of the story here is that betul lah, we have to spend money on the thing that we are happy with. Michelle, the two big ticket items that normally people think about is house and car. Do you feel that there could be other big ticket items that people can invest in instead of just these two things that we all know of already, and we all have been speaking about it already?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if let's split it into two categories. The first one is people who are single. For example, like what do you save for if you don't intend to start a family? And we'll cover the family later. So a small thing that you can kind of invest for is probably something that makes you happy. For instance, a trip abroad. Like one day you want to quit your job and then you want to go and travel for 3 months, or you want to go backpacking for 3 months. That's something that you can save towards. Another one is if you do intend to get married and have children, one of the things that you can also save up for is your wedding. Weddings typically cost a lot of money. So if you do intend to have a big wedding, for instance, and that is if you're conscious that like what are all the costs that comes with a wedding, that's something that you can save for as well. If you are married and you're planning to have children, there's a lot more that you can save towards. So for instance, your children's education in the future, that's something that a lot of people save towards. I have my friends who actually put all of their children's education fund in ETFs, and that hopefully will grow until the baby is 18 or 20 and then goes to university, and they have a good amount of money to let their kids choose where they want to have their education. And if your kid does get a sponsorship at the end of the day, they get a education, like they get it for free, then you can let them decide what they want to do with the money. Yeah, the scholarship. Yes, that's the word for it. Yeah, if they do get a scholarship at the end of the day, what's even greater is that you can let them decide what they want to do with the money. So those are some of the things that you can save for that's not a car or not a house.
You know, that's the big ticket item that I spend on, actually. I invest a lot on my kids' education. Not so much house, not so much car. I just want to make sure that I have a nice house that is above my roof, no leaking, and the car that runs properly. But the school is or education is a big deal for me, because I was fortunate enough to get a good education. My wife is fortunate enough to get a good education, and you know how the old adage says, you can take everything away from you, but you can't take away your education. So that's the big ticket item for me, at least. Michelle, final step number 7.
Great. So this question actually ties back to what Peter said just now, and it's actually a book that I'm currently reading. It's called Happy Money, The Science of Happier Spending. So actually, there are 2 researchers in the US that did some research, and they realized that money can actually buy happiness. And there are 5 core things that you can buy that they research that can make you happy. And let me make sure I get it right. Step number 5 is spending on others. And actually, I don't know how many years ago, but I'm sure all of you know Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They actually sat down and agreed that they will give 99% of their wealth away. And Warren Buffett actually said that this is the best thing in his life that he has ever done with his money. So with that said, it comes back to you. These 5 core principles of things that you can spend money on that makes you happy. Number 1, you can spend on experiences instead of things like what Peter has mentioned, buying cars, or I want to spend my money somewhere else where I can experience, especially experiencing it with a loved one. Second thing is consuming less of the things that you like. So for example, if you really, really like cars, if you get to buy a car every day, then it's no longer an enjoyable thing, right? So you want to consume less of the things that you enjoy so that you can create more happiness. The third thing is spending on things that save you time. So buying time with more money, that's also a way to spend your money happier or convert money into happiness. Fourth is delaying your consumption. So that's the opposite of I get now, I pay later. This is I pay now and I get later. For example, a good example of that is when you travel, right? Like let's say you travel. Now that we can't talk about it too much, but 12 months from now, you can save your money in order to do that Europe trip, for example, that you've been meaning to do for 1 month. That amount of time from now until next year, March, you actually build up a lot of anticipation and you build up a lot of excitement for it. And the happiness actually lasts you for 12 months instead of just that 1 month when you're traveling. So this is the idea of delayed consumption. The 5th one, spend on others, comes back down to your goal. If to you, happiness means I get to spend my money giving to others, it can be charity or it can be helping out friends and family who need it, that is something that you can do when you've built your wealth, and you can set that as a financial goal for yourself.
It also helps you feel that good, quite literally. Simon Sinek was talking about this a few years ago, where they measure people who give away willingly, the dopamine levels shoot up to a point where you feel better for yourself helping people. But there's also charity starts at home, right? And right now, I mean, Peter has been talking about this throughout the entire hour. Income is a big issue for many Malaysians, and things are getting worse because of the pandemic. So the question is, how much should we give away in order for us to actually realize that we have to leave some for ourselves? Michelle or Peter, either one of you want to take this?
Peter?
More specifically, yeah. So I didn't quite get the question. Like,
yeah, how much should we set aside for giving? I suppose.
I think for me, I never really thought about that. How much should I set aside for giving for a family? I really never thought about that, because I think for me myself is just whatever my family want. I just want to make sure I can provide it. So I actually, very good question. It made me myself think. So I tend to think in a very different perspective, just to share with you guys. Because I've been doing my own business since I graduated. Like, I only worked for people for half a year, and ever since you started your own business, always it's a first year curve where you have started doing it, kan. Then if you do well, subsequent few years, you tend to think less about how do I limit my spending. You tend to think about more like, okay, my wife say I want to buy a house. Then you're like, okay, great, that's 2,000. Then the next question comes to your mind immediately is, how do I make extra 2,000 ringgit a month? Yeah, you rarely think about like, how do I cut down that? Yeah, and even until today, I've been very much adopting that mindset. So I barely think about that. But having said that as well, I think when it comes to that, because it's not a single person problem, it's not like if I think that I have a mind in my mindset is I only want to spend 1,000 ringgit on my family and my wife will immediately be happy or not happy, right? Yeah, she'll probably scold you if you tell her that or something like that. And you tell her, I can only give you 500 ringgit a month. Yeah, you'll probably not live a very happy marriage. The point is, I would say that this comes to another whole different set of things, which is sitting down with your spouse and deciding on a financial goal together. And I think that this is something that a lot of people don't do. A lot of men are very...
I was about to say that.
Yeah.
It's like, for some reasons, right? Guys don't want to talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very important that go to your wife, your spouse, sit down and then have a conversation and tell upfront, like say, like, I know your expectation is the kind of lifestyle that you want to live, that you hope I provide you, need me to give this much. But the truth is, I tak boleh sekarang. So how? And have that true heart-to-heart talk. Trust me, whether you can provide or not later, right? At least for the next 3 months, your wife will be happy that you had this conversation with her. And you'll still have a 3 months happy life for the next 3 months. And then please go and do something and figure out how to rearrange that. But there's no formula to it. Every couple is different. Every person is different when it comes to that. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have much time left. So let's do a rapid fire question thing. Isa is asking about the SB. Is that a good place to put the 3 to 6 months money fund that we speak of just now? Peter?
Maybe? Yes. For me, yes.
Okay. Next question is, of course, by Tay. Tay was asking, we haven't spoken yet on achieving the attainable $1 million, but it seems to be too far away. I would feel like giving up and just go Jolie. How do we keep ourselves in check always? Michelle?
That's why we have to come back to the financial goals. What does $1 million mean to you? $1 million is really an arbitrary number, really. What you want to do is you set your financial goals and you want to set milestones in order to reach that so that you don't give up and just go Jolie.
Yeah.
Right. Shakirin is asking, what do you think about young individuals in their 20s buying a house for investment purposes, not for staying, meaning there's an intention to either rent or flip it? Would this be a good way of earning extra income?
Yeah, that's what I did. My first house, until today, I don't have my own house that I live in. All the houses I have, I rented out. So I think it's very good that your first house, use it for a rental. Not so much for flipping, because that's huge capital required. Buy your first house to rent out to people. I think that's a very good choice.
Just want to continue. There's a follow-up to this. Times are hard now, and finding tenants is going to be extremely hard. Is this a big risk for young people buying a house and planning to rent it out? What happens if there's no renters out there?
You want me to take that? Yeah.
Sure.
Sure, because you went through this journey, yeah?
I think the thing about looking for houses is being patient. Yeah. Actually, buying a house, if you want to buy for investment, is the homework that you need to do is as good as buying a stock. Literally, let me share even my first experience of buying my house is I check on iProperty. I make sure that the rental that I can get is higher than the installment that I need to pay for the house. Now, number two, I actually went to the property. I go and talk to the neighbors surrounding that place and ask them how fast do they see the rental come in. So if let's say the house is empty, how long is it usually empty? Does the things come easily? How often people ask you, is there a place to rent? And you really go down to the ground and ask them like, hey, if you rented a house here, how long have you been renting it? Are you staying here as a family? And do you when's the last time your landlord increased your rental rates, right? And all these are actually homework that you really, really need to do. And then after you know all this, you get a good data, okay, this place good. Family usually stay here, very fast, get off the hand, not my agent tell me, but I go and ask the neighbor. Neighbor is the one who tell me. Then the next thing that you need to ask yourself is this: what about the nearby development? Is there going to be another new building that's going to come up that's going to fight for rental? Is there going to be a new transportation hub that comes by there? Is there a petrol station nearby? Is there a McDonald's nearby? Is there Starbucks nearby? And for those of you who don't know, McDonald's and Starbucks actually do their property research very well before they open a place. They only open it if there's a good population. So you latch on that. Is there a school? Because government also do their planning. They won't open a school if there's no family there. So you see, once you do all this research, right, then you get your numbers. Then that is when you have to stay very patient and find for the right property. Because like we say, you are not looking to buy a house to stay. So there's no point getting too emotionally attached. It doesn't need to be very beautiful. It doesn't need to have a rainbow coming out from your window. Yeah. All you need to do is know whether the data makes sense. If the data makes sense, then the tenants will follow usually. Then the next question, even if you don't get that, is can you afford to pay 6 months of the tenancy if it's going to be empty? If you can't afford to pay 6 months with your current income, then my suggestion again is don't buy. Yeah, because there will be at least 5 to 6 months that you can't rent out in between one sometimes.
Fantastic. Anonymous is asking, personal branding, is it important, particularly in this day and age? Michelle, you want to take this on?
Definitely. I think it also boils down to, you mentioned new income stream, right? What is this new income stream that you have? In order for you to be able to create this income stream, you have to some way or another be able to market it. I think marketing and branding of the product, service, or whether yourself is important. So let's say if you want to start selling services, you want to start building websites, then you have to be able to market that well, or else no one is going to reach out to you unless you're really good at going out there and sourcing customers. But then the customers will also want to know, who is this person? Is this person reliable or not? And that's why coming back to personal branding, that's important, because today all the information is available online. If you're not available online, none of your results can be shown online. It's very hard for people to trust you. And that's why I think personal branding is really important.
Final question for this afternoon. Where should we put that 10% extra income for retirement? Is FD a good option? Or maybe other selection? I think I need both of you to chime in here. We'll start with Michelle, maybe.
Not financial advice, disclaimer first, not giving you any financial advice, but personally, I don't think that the retirement savings should go to a thing like FD. If you look at the FD rates, it's not above inflation rates. So if you put your money in there for retirement, what you may eventually end up with when you retire is that you have less money than you intended for your retirement. And that's why your retirement savings, for me, should be invested in other areas. And like what Peter has mentioned just now, there are many places where you can invest your money. If you feel like you have the capabilities or you want to do the research and you're interested in real estate, that's definitely a viable option. If you feel like it's too much uncertainty, you're not that interested in real estate at all, you're not interested to do any more research in houses or real estate, then you have to find other sources or other asset classes that you can invest in. And you have to get enough knowledge in order to know what fits your needs. So for example, if investing in the stock market is very scary for you, every day the stock market goes up and down and you cannot detach your emotions from the prices of your stocks going down, then that may not be a suitable asset class for you to invest your money. You can find other asset classes. For me personally, I am a big fan of passive investing. So that means I don't have to actively monitor anything. I invest into ETFs, what Peter has mentioned earlier during this workshop. So that's potentially something that you can look at if you're looking at something that's a bit more passive and probably not so stressful.
Peter, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think when you are looking at a retirement fund, because you got a much longer time horizon, so I agree, Michelle, right? You shouldn't put into something that is super low risk and doesn't have any high returns at all. Because you have the time horizon like 30 years, 20 years, that kind of time, you should put into something that can offer you a much higher return. And because you have the time, you can take more risks as well. So I would suggest something that's equity based, equity based investment. Equity meaning a stock market, right? You can either go for ETF, you can either go for individual stock investing, or even go for unit trust. Yeah, just make sure you know what you're investing into and read the results properly, lah. That's all about it. Yeah.
And I would like to end this afternoon with Mustaqiza's question. At the end of the day, what do we need to change most? Change, maknanya there is a verb that needs to be done here to overcome any financial issues, particularly during this period of uncertainty. Let's start with Peter.
I think the answer for me is actually the mindset and what you're willing to do. Yeah, because we are in this time where things are very different. The only stability you get is change is very constant, I say. So change the way you think about money. What do I mean by that is that number one, salary is not the only income. Income is what you can control. Salary you can control. So number two, figure out what you can in terms of your lifestyle to minimize it. Think very carefully what kind of life you really want to live. Do you really need the nice watch, the nice house, the nice car, all these kind of things? And lastly is think about what are ways that can help you to increase your income. Yeah, just like what Michelle said, talk to 5 of your friends, ask them, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think if I offer you today, you will pay me money? Yeah, that will be the first step that you need to do. And critically, at the end of the day, it's just a change of mindset and what you're willing to do. Yeah, that's all.
Amy?
I feel like Peter
Amy,
stole my. I feel like Peter stole my answer as well. Same. For me, it's also you have to change your mindset on top of looking at alternative income streams. I think one thing that's really important about money is that understanding that money is tied to your emotions, and a lot of your behaviors towards managing money and personal finance is actually tied to how you were brought up. And there's this word called money scripts. You need to understand. Like if you say things like, I can never make enough money lah. How easy is it to save? I cannot say if I live paycheck to paycheck, I will never be able to save so much money like you guys. Everyone else is very privileged and I'm not, so I can never reach that. If you always think about things negatively, if you have such negative money scripts, then you will forever be stuck in that mindset that you can't save, you can't invest, and you can't build your wealth. But actually everyone can, and exactly like what Peter said, if you follow that steps and you change your mindset, you'll definitely be able to do that and finally set those financial goals. So you really need to sit down and think through whether your purchases and your past purchase behavior are actually buying things that really bring you happiness and defines a goal for you at the end of the day. If actually you bought a watch last year and you realize that actually it was only exciting for me to save my money in order to buy that watch, and buying that watch is actually didn't spark joy for me, then maybe that watch is not your final financial goal. So really sit down and think that through. This weekend, we're almost at the end of the week. So this weekend, sit down, take like 1-2 hours and think about that and speak to the people in your life who affect your personal finance standings.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate all the participants coming over and staying on for the past 1 hour, 5 minutes. There's one thing that we are asking for you. Do give us a 5-star rating. That would really help us in understanding us that being great ourselves. So please give us the 5-star. That would be really, really helpful for all of our KPIs. We also need to increase our personal income from Astro. Thank you very much. You can reach out to Michelle on her do it. You can reach out to Peter on Mr. Money. And it's important for all of us to continue on this conversation. Like I said, remember, there's a lot of nitty-gritty questions that were coming from the 7 pointers just now. So do reach out to the both of them and ask them what they want to do, how they can help solve your issues. One more thing, on top of the 5 stars, that this is the 4th time of me asking from you to give, is please see and tell us what kind of content you want from webinars like this. We started off with this, home budgeting, which I think is important because not many of us are financial experts and all of us want to make our money work for us, right? So if you see or hear some ideas that you want us to do, let us know, right? I'm reachable on Twitter, whatever, Clubhouse, Instagram, I'm reachable there. Let us know what kind of things that you want us to talk about on this kind of platform, on this kind of seminar. So that is the 2 things that I want. Hopefully you give us 5-star. Let us know what kind of future items that you want us to talk about. That's it from me. I'm Ibrahim Sani, and we have Peter Young of Mr. Money as well as Michelle of Do It, signing off for this afternoon. Have a good day ahead.
Thank you.